Last video session, we talked about the word disciple, and we began to unpack what that word meant. Today, we're going to expand on that word. Actually, we're going to play with that word and do some things with grammar and words that will help us to explain what are the implications. What's a more well-rounded out, well thought out view of what a disciple is and does. And so let's get started. So the first word, again, we're going to review on this one, and it's this word disciple. A disciple is a learner. In the Greek, it is this word maphete, which also means an apprentice. Students would sit down with a rabbi and they were to teach and learn from them. You know, learning comes in a lot of different ways, and one of my great memories was watching each of my girls learn how to ride a bike. And there's never the thrill of that first time when they actually get moving and they put all the pieces together. You know, for us, for many of us, riding a bike's been a long time ago. But think of all the balance, pedal motion, holding the steering wheel, balance which way, all these things, how to brake, all those things are so important when you begin to learn how to ride a bike. And so what does that have to do with being a disciple? Well, a disciple is someone who is constantly putting themselves on the bike and being willing to learn. Some of us don't learn. We get tired of learning as we get older. Sometimes we don't learn because we're fearful or afraid, sort of like our girls when they were beginning to think about riding a bike. There was a good fear factor of them going, oh my gosh, I could fall and hurt myself. You know, learning also stops sometimes when we keep hitting our head up against a wall and despair comes in and we just say, gosh, I just can't figure this out. I give up. Well, learning as a disciple is something that will challenge each of us, but there are great thrills when we submit ourselves and we work to figure it out with Christ again and again and again. And that's what a disciple is. Having that thrill of learning, becoming competent, knowing how to become more and more the person that he wants us to be. The next word that we're going to look at is we're going to add this little suffix called ship. And, you know, I never knew why we put on that ship on the end of words, but think of all the different words that have ship at the end: membership, friendship, entrepreneurship, citizenship. So why do we do that? Well, there are some good rules of why we do that. But the one that I think fits the most with us is this idea of entrepreneurship and the definition there. And we add the ship onto entrepreneurship to say there's certain skill and capacity of being an entrepreneur. And I believe that's very similar to why we add the ship onto discipleship. You see, it denotes certain skills or capacity. The skill of being a disciple, a learner. And so discipleship is a step beyond just being a disciple. It's the mastery of being a disciple. You know, I had a plumbing problem one time, and my plumber, Sheldon, came over and schooled me in discipleship. And we were talking, and he was working on some things, and I asked him what his favorite verse was, and Sheldon said, oh, I know what it is. It's 2 Peter 1. And it's a great list of, and add to your life faith and goodness and brotherly kindness and all sorts of good things. But then there's this warning at the end, and it says, if you do not have these skills, these qualities in increasing measure, and basically what the scriptures say is, if you don't increase in them, you're losing. You're being wasteful. You're not being productive in your life in Christ. And so Part of being a disciple is that there is a maturation, a growth. We don't just get stuck and say, "Oh, I'm really happy with the amount of love that I am able to do and give to other people." No, as a disciple, as someone who is practicing discipleship, they're becoming a master at how to love and care for others. It is this increasing measure that's the challenge for each of us. Here's our third word. Our third word is this word discipling. We're going to add the ing, and that's a present participle, one of the great words that we haven't thought about, or the grammar that we haven't thought about in a long time. Barna recently did a survey, and it was called The State of Discipleship. And what they learned was pretty staggering and in some ways very disheartening for those of us that are trying to think through how do we help the church become more like Christ. And the stats said that why are you not helping somebody else? Why are you not discipling somebody else? What's stopping you from doing that? And two of the stats that they found were very interesting. One was that 65% of the people, the respondents, said, I'm just too busy to help somebody else. 35% said, I just am inadequate. I'm not sure I'm ready to teach somebody else. You know, in the book of Romans, there's a great little passage, and this is towards the end of the book of Romans. Now, Rome was not a place that Paul, the Apostle Paul, had ever been in, but he's writing to them. And this is the regular church. And listen to what it says. This is Romans 15, 14. And this is from the New Living. And it says, I am fully convinced, my dear brothers and sisters, that you are full of goodness. You know these things so well that you can teach each other about them. That you can teach each other about them. Now, Paul was not writing to the apostles and saying, hey, you're ready to teach. He was writing to the everyday person. And he said, I am confident that you are able to teach others. You see, you and I are able to do it. And for us to be a part of what the Great Commission is, which is making disciples, for us to be a disciple, becoming more and more like Christ, it's not just about me and how I'm doing personally. Part of what we are to do in our discipleship is to learn, how do I give away what I have been given? How do I take from Christ, grow in that, and then give it away to somebody else? And that's what discipling is about. The final word that we want to look at is this word disciple making. We're adding the making on the end. Now, it's interesting. When I was a pastor, I remember coming home from a meeting that it was a discipling meeting. I'd been meeting with some guys, and we were at Bob Evans and early in the morning, and we'd had a good time. And I was in the hallway talking to a couple other staff folks, and I was kind of sharing what I was doing. And one of them said, well, are you helping the other guys do this, or are you always teaching it? And it kind of stopped me in my tracks. Now, let me say, I was the group's pastor at that point in time. I was, spiritual maturity was a part of my gig and what I was credentialed to do. And yet in that hallway, I kind of had this big realization. Oh my, I have been missing a piece here. I have not been disciple making. You see, disciple making is about the next step. Not only am I helping somebody else, discipling, but I'm helping somebody else as I'm discipling so that they could also do it themselves. You see, if we're going to help the church become the church and be healthy and strong, we need lots of people. We need hundreds of people that are helping others to learn how to give away these things, how to be a disciple, how to do discipleship, the mastery of being a disciple. How do we help others? Discipling, helping them, somebody else to get it. But we also want to release folks that are ready to help others. 2 Timothy 2:2 is a verse that Paul wrote from his book. And this was one of the last books that Paul, the Apostle Paul, wrote. And in it, he says, and the things you've heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust, which is a beautiful word, entrust, give it to somebody else so that they can also teach others. You see, right there, we see disciple making popping out in the scriptures. And Paul knew that as his life was coming to an end, he knew that for the success of this early church to continue to grow, there needed to be others. He needed to entrust others so that they could also teach others. You see, these are the 4 words of discipleship. Disciple, learning, growing, staying on the edge of learning and not being satisfied. Discipleship, having this continual growth, maturation, more and more beauty, and more of the character of Christ as we go. Skill and capacity of being a disciple. But it's also about, how am I giving myself away? The good things that I'm receiving from Christ, how am I giving that away to somebody else? But finally, the big vision is to say, if I'm a disciple, somebody else needs to follow me up. Somebody else needs to be able to also instruct others and help others in the process of becoming a disciple.